Baby found a pregnant German shepherd, half buried in mud. What Baby did. Next, it moved everyone to tears. What happened next will shock you. This incredible story of courage, hope, and an unbreakable bond will leave you in tears. If this touches your heart, make sure to like, share, and let us know where you're listening from in the comments below. The small town of Pineville wasn't known for much. Nestled between thick forests and rolling hills, it was the kind of place where everyone knew each other, where doors remained unlocked at night, and where the biggest excitement was usually the annual Harvest Festival. For Hannah Marshall, it was a safe haven, a place to rebuild her life and raise her son away from the chaos of the city. Hannah's days were filled with exhaustion. As a single mother working 2 jobs, she barely had time to breathe. The local diner in the morning, the convenience store in the evening, her hands were always busy, her mind always racing with worries about bills, about tomorrow, about Noah. Noah was 5 years old, with eyes the color of rain-washed stones and a heart bigger than his tiny body could contain. But Noah carried a shadow that followed him everywhere. He didn't speak. Not a word, not a whisper had passed his lips in 8 months. Not since that terrible night when everything changed. The doctors called it selective mutism, triggered by trauma. Hannah simply called it heartbreak. "Noah, sweetie, stay where Mommy can see you," Hannah called out as she hung laundry in their small backyard. Their modest rental house sat at the edge of town, where civilization gave way to wilderness. The forest loomed just beyond their property, dark and mysterious. Noah didn't answer. He never did. But he nodded, his serious little face solemn as he played with a pile of fallen leaves. Hannah watched him with a mixture of love and worry that had become as familiar to her as breathing. He was such a quiet child, even before the accident, always observing, always feeling so deeply. Hannah's neighbor, Mrs. Peterson, a woman with silver hair and kind eyes, often said that Noah had an old soul. "That boy," she would say, shaking her head. "He understands things that even we adults miss, mark my words." And perhaps she was right. Noah seemed to connect with animals in a way that was almost magical. Stray cats followed him home. Birds would land near him without fear. Once, Hannah had found him sitting perfectly still in the yard, a wild rabbit calmly eating clover from his outstretched palm. 10 more minutes, then lunch," Hannah called, pinning the last of the towels to the line. The October air was crisp, carrying the promise of rain. Dark clouds gathered on the horizon, and Hannah frowned. The forecast had mentioned storms, and their roof leaked in 3 places already. When she turned back, Noah was gone. Panic seized her throat. "Noah!" Her voice cracked as she scanned the yard. "Noah!" She dropped the empty laundry basket and ran to the edge of the property, her heart hammering against her ribs. The forest stretched before her, endless and forbidding. She saw it then, a small footprint in the soft earth leading toward the trees, and beside it, another, and another. He had wandered into the forest. Hannah had always warned him never to go into the woods alone. There were too many dangers, steep ravines, the old abandoned quarry filled with water, wild animals. And in her darkest thoughts, things worse than animals, things like the people who had taken everything from her before they'd moved here. "Noah!" she screamed, plunging into the trees without hesitation. Branches clawed at her face, roots threatened to trip her, but Hannah pushed forward, calling her son's name over and over, though she knew he wouldn't answer. The first drops of rain began to fall, cold against her skin. The sky darkened overhead, turning the forest into a labyrinth of shadows. Hannah's lungs burned as she ran, her mind filled with terrible images. Noah fallen into a ravine, Noah lost and alone in the coming storm, Noah hurt and unable to call for help. 10 minutes became 20. The rain fell harder, soaking through her clothes. Hannah's voice grew hoarse from shouting. Tears blurred her vision, mixing with the raindrops on her face. "Please," she whispered, no longer sure if she was praying or just begging the universe. "Please, I can't lose him too." A flash of color caught her eye, a splash of red against the browns and greens of the forest floor. Noah's jacket. Hannah stumbled toward it, nearly falling to her knees in relief when she saw him. But Noah wasn't alone, and he wasn't running or playing. He was kneeling in the mud, his small body bent forward in concentration, his hands covered in dark earth. "Noah, what are you—" The words died in Hannah's throat as she came closer, Her son was digging frantically in the mud. His face was streaked with dirt and tears, his expression twisted with a desperation that Hannah had never seen before. And partially buried in the mud before him was something large, something living. Hannah approached slowly, her mind struggling to make sense of what she was seeing. As she drew closer, the shape became clearer. A dog, a large dog, its fur caked with mud, lying so still that, for a moment, Hannah thought it was dead. But then she saw the shallow rise and fall of its side. It was breathing. Noah's fingers were bleeding from digging, but he didn't stop. He looked up at his mother, his eyes wide and pleading. Though he made no sound, his message was clear. Help me save her. Hannah knelt beside her son, the mud soaking through her jeans. Up close she could see that the dog was a German shepherd, its once beautiful coat now filthy and matted. And there was something else. The dog's belly was swollen and round. "She's pregnant," Hannah whispered, shock giving way to horror. Who would do this? Who would bury a pregnant dog and leave her to die? The dog's eyes fluttered open, warm amber, clouded with pain, but somehow still gentle. She made no move to growl or bite, though she must have been terrified. Instead, she simply watched Noah, as if she understood that this small human was trying to help. "We need to get her out," Hannah said, beginning to dig alongside her son. The rain was coming down harder now, turning the soil to slick mud that slid back into the hole almost as quickly as they could remove it. Hannah's nails broke as she clawed at the earth, but she didn't stop. Lightning flashed overhead, followed by a crack of thunder that made Hannah jump. The storm was getting worse, and they were exposed on this hillside. They needed to work faster. "Just a little more," Hannah encouraged, though she wasn't sure if she was talking to Noah, the dog, or herself. Her fingers brushed against something cold and hard, a metal chain. She dug deeper and found that it was wrapped around the dog's neck, anchoring her to something buried even deeper. "Who did this to you?" Hannah murmured, working to loosen the chain. The dog whimpered softly, the first sound Hannah had heard her make. Noah stroked her head with muddy fingers, his touch impossibly gentle. After what seemed like hours but was probably only minutes, they managed to free the dog's upper body from the mud. But she still couldn't move. Her lower half remained buried. "We need something to dig with," Hannah said, looking around desperately. There was nothing but trees and mud and the relentless rain. "Noah, stay with her. I'm going to look for a branch or something we can use." She stood up, her legs shaking with cold and exertion. But before she could take a step, Noah tugged at her sleeve. He pointed at the dog's belly, his expression urgent. Hannah looked closer and saw what had alarmed her son. The dog's stomach was contracting. "Oh my God," she breathed. "She's going into labor." Panic flooded Hannah's veins. They couldn't deliver puppies here, in the mud and the rain. The mother was too weak, too cold. They needed to get her to help immediately. With renewed determination, Hannah tore off her jacket and began to dig with it, using the fabric to scoop away larger portions of mud. Noah watched, his eyes wide, as his mother worked with a frantic energy. "Just a little more," Hannah said through gritted teeth. "Almost there." Finally, she had cleared enough mud to see what was holding the dog in place. What she saw made bile rise in her throat. The dog's back legs were bound with rusty wire, cutting deep into her flesh. The wire had been deliberately twisted tight, ensuring she couldn't escape, and the chain around her neck was padlocked to a metal stake driven deep into the ground. This wasn't an accident. This was cruelty, calculated and deliberate. "Who would do this?" Hannah whispered, her voice breaking. Noah's shoulders shook with silent sobs as he petted the dog's head, trying to comfort her, even as she lay trapped. Hannah attacked the wire with trembling fingers, trying to loosen it without causing more pain. The sharp edges sliced into her own skin, but she barely noticed. All she could think about was freeing this innocent creature before her puppies came. "I need something to cut this," she muttered, looking around desperately. Then she remembered her keychain had a small multi-tool with wire cutters. She fumbled in her pocket, her fingers numb with cold, and pulled it out. The wire cutters were tiny, meant for electrical work, not for cutting through thick, rusty wire, but it was all they had. Hannah positioned the tool and squeezed with all her strength. The wire bent, but didn't break. "Come on," she hissed, repositioning and trying again. This time, the wire gave slightly. The dog whimpered as the movement sent new pain through her injured legs. "I'm sorry," Hannah whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I'm so sorry." Noah watched, his small face a mask of determination and fear. He placed his hands on the dog's side, as if trying to transfer his own warmth and strength to her. The dog's eyes never left his face. Another contraction rippled across the dog's belly. Hannah worked faster, her hands bloody now from the wire and the rough metal of the tool. With a final surge of strength, she cut through the first loop of wire. "One down," she panted, moving to the next. The rain had plastered her hair to her face, and she was shivering uncontrollably. But she didn't stop. The second wire was thicker, twisted multiple times around the dog's legs. Hannah's tool slipped in her bloody hands, nearly falling into the mud. Noah caught it before it could drop, his reflexes surprisingly quick. He handed it back to his mother, their eyes meeting in a moment of silent communication. "We can do this," Hannah's eyes said. "I know," Noah's replied. With renewed focus, Hannah attacked the second wire. It took 3 attempts, but finally it gave way with a snap. The dog's legs were free, though still deeply wounded by the cruel bindings. Now only the chain remained. Hannah examined the padlock, knowing instantly that her tiny tool wouldn't be able to break it. They would have to pull the stake out of the ground. "Help me," she said to Noah, positioning herself to pull on the chain. Noah, understanding immediately, moved to stand beside her. Together, they pulled, their feet slipping in the mud, their muscles straining. The stake didn't budge. Hannah could have screamed in frustration. They were so close. The dog was almost free, but without removing that chain, they couldn't move her. Another contraction, stronger this time. The dog let out a low moan of pain. They were running out of time. Noah suddenly released the chain and moved back to the dog's head. He stroked her ears, then looked up at his mother with an expression Hannah couldn't quite read. He pointed at the chain, then at the dog's neck, making a slipping motion with his hands. "You think we can slip it over her head?" Hannah asked, understanding dawning. It might work. The dog was thin from neglect, and the chain, though tight, might just be loose enough. Carefully, Hannah tried to work the chain up over the dog's head. It caught on her ears, making her whimper. "I'm sorry, girl," Hannah murmured. "Just a little more." With gentle persistence, she managed to work the chain past the widest part of the dog's skull. One of the German Shepherd's ears was bleeding now, where the metal had scraped it, but freedom was just inches away. With a final, careful tug, Hannah lifted the chain clear of the dog's head. They had done it. She was free. But the victory was short-lived. Though no longer chained, the dog still couldn't move. Her legs, too long bound and injured, wouldn't support her weight. And her contractions were coming faster now, her breathing labored and quick. "We need to carry her," Hannah said, already trying to figure out how. The dog was large, probably 80 pounds at least, and Hannah wasn't sure she could lift her alone, but they had to try. She removed her flannel shirt, leaving only a thin t-shirt between her skin and the driving rain. Working quickly, she fashioned the shirt into a makeshift sling. "This is going to hurt," she warned the dog, though she wasn't sure if the animal could understand. "But we're going to get you to safety." With extreme care, Hannah and Noah worked together to slide the sling under the dog's body. The German Shepherd whimpered as they moved her, but didn't struggle or try to bite. It was as if she understood that these humans, despite the pain they were causing, were trying to help. Once the sling was in place, Hannah took a deep breath. "On 3, she told Noah. 1, 2, 3. Together, they lifted. The dog was even heavier than Hannah had feared, her pregnant belly adding significant weight to her already substantial frame. Hannah's back protested, her arms trembling with the strain. But the look on Noah's face, pure determination despite his small size and the minimal weight he could actually support, gave her strength she didn't know she had. Inch by agonizing inch, they carried the dog through the forest. The rain continued to pour, turning the ground treacherous. Twice Hannah nearly fell, her feet sliding in the mud. But somehow, they kept moving, guided by some instinct that seemed to tell Hannah which way to go, even in the storm's confusion. The dog lay still in their makeshift sling, her eyes half closed with exhaustion. But she was breathing, and that was what mattered. She was alive, and they were going to keep her that way. After what seemed like hours, Hannah spotted a welcome sight through the trees, the back of their house. Somehow, they had circled around and were approaching from a different direction than they had left. Almost there, Hannah gasped, her arms burning with fatigue. Noah's face was pale with strain, but he didn't falter. His small hands gripped the edge of the sling with white-knuckled determination. They staggered across the yard and up onto the back porch. Hannah fumbled with the door, finally managing to kick it open. They carried the dog inside, leaving a trail of mud and water on the floor that Hannah couldn't bring herself to care about. "The bathroom," she panted. "We need to get her clean and warm." They maneuvered through the small house to the bathroom, where they gently lowered the dog into the tub. She lay there, utterly exhausted, her sides heaving with each breath. Now that they were in the light, Hannah could see just how dire her condition was. The German Shepherd's coat, where it wasn't caked with mud, was dull and patchy. Her ribs showed clearly through her skin, and her legs bore deep, infected wounds from the wire. But her eyes, those amber eyes, still held a spark of life, of fight. "You're safe now," Hannah told her, running the water to warm it. "We're going to take care of you." Noah knelt beside the tub, his small hand resting on the dog's head. The German Shepherd's tail thumped weakly against the porcelain, a tiny gesture of trust that brought fresh tears to Hannah's eyes. As Hannah began to gently rinse the mud from the dog's coat, she noticed something glinting beneath the grime on her neck. A tag. She carefully brushed away the mud to reveal a small metal disc attached to a weathered collar. "She belongs to someone," Hannah murmured, turning the tag to read it. But instead of an address or phone number, the tag bore only a single word: Luna. "Luna," Hannah said softly. The dog's ears perked slightly at the sound. "Is that your name, girl? Luna?" The dog, Luna, blinked slowly, her tail giving another weak thump. Noah smiled, the first real smile Hannah had seen on his face in months. He pointed to Luna, then to the sky, then made a circular motion with his finger. "The moon," Hannah translated, understanding her son's silent language. "Luna means moon. That's a beautiful name." As they continued to clean her, Luna suddenly stiffened, a low whine escaping her throat. Her belly visibly contracted. "The puppies," Hannah said, panic rising again. "They're coming now." She had helped deliver kittens once, years ago, but never puppies, and certainly never in circumstances like these. "We need a vet." But Pineville was small, with only one veterinary clinic, and it was on the other side of town. With the storm raging outside and Hannah's car low on gas, she wasn't sure they could make it in time. Noah tugged at her sleeve, then pointed to the phone on the wall next to the bathroom door. "You're right," Hannah said. "We'll call for help." She dialed the number for Pineville Veterinary Clinic, praying that someone would still be there despite the late hour and the storm. After 4 rings, a gruff voice answered, "Pineville Vet." "Dr. Martinez?" Hannah said, relief flooding her. "This is Hannah Marshall. I have an emergency. We found a pregnant German Shepherd who was buried in the mud in the forest. She's been hurt, tied up with wire, and she's going into labor right now." There was a pause, then Dr. Martinez's voice came back, sharper now. "How far along is the labor?" "I don't know exactly," Hannah admitted, "but the contractions are coming faster, maybe every few minutes now." "Can you bring her in?" Hannah looked out the window at the driving rain, thought about her nearly empty gas tank, and made a decision. "I don't think so. Not safely, not in this storm." Another pause, then, "Give me your address. I'll come to you." Hannah nearly collapsed with relief as she gave him the information. "Thank you. Thank you so much." "Keep her warm and comfortable," Dr. Martinez instructed. "Don't try to move her more than necessary. I'll be there as soon as I can." Hannah hung up and returned to the bathroom, where Noah was gently stroking Luna's head. The dog's eyes were closed now, her breathing shallow. "Help is coming," Hannah told them both, kneeling beside the tub. "Just hang on a little longer, Luna." They continued to wash the mud from Luna's coat, revealing more of her condition. Besides the wounds on her legs, she had older scars across her back and sides. Whatever life she had led before they found her, it hadn't been kind. Noah worked with intense focus, his small hands careful and gentle as they cleaned around Luna's ears and face. The dog leaned into his touch, as if drawing comfort from this quiet child who had found her in the darkness. Another contraction seized Luna, stronger than the last. She whimpered, her body tensing. Hannah stroked her side, murmuring encouragement. "You're doing great, Luna. Just breathe." The minutes stretched into an hour, Luna's contractions grew more frequent, more intense. Hannah began to worry that Dr. Martinez wouldn't arrive in time. She had only a vague idea of how to help a dog give birth, and Luna was already so weak. A knock at the door startled them both. Noah looked up, his eyes wide. "That must be Dr. Martinez," Hannah said, standing. Her legs were stiff from kneeling so long on the hard bathroom floor. "I'll let him in." She hurried to the front door and opened it to find a man in his 50s with salt and pepper hair and a weathered face, clutching a large medical bag. He was soaked to the skin, his glasses speckled with raindrops. "Thank you for coming," Hannah said, stepping aside to let him in. Dr. Martinez nodded curtly, already moving toward the sound of Luna's whimpers. "How long since you found her?" "About 2 hours," Hannah said, following him to the bathroom. "She was buried in mud, chained to a stake. Someone did this to her deliberately." The vet's face darkened as he entered the bathroom and saw Luna lying in the tub. Noah still knelt beside her, his hand on her head. The boy looked up at Dr. Martinez without fear, his eyes asking the question he couldn't voice. "Can you save her?" Dr. Martinez knelt down, setting his bag on the floor. "Hello there, young man," he said gently. "I see you've been taking good care of this mama dog." Noah nodded solemnly. The vet turned his attention to Luna, his hands moving with practiced efficiency as he examined her. "The wire did a lot of damage," he said grimly. "There's infection setting in, and she's severely malnourished and dehydrated." Hannah's heart sank. "But you can help her, right?" Dr. Martinez didn't answer immediately. He continued his examination, checking Luna's gums, her eyes, her heartbeat. Finally, he looked up at Hannah. "I'll do everything I can, but I need to be honest with you. Her condition is very serious, and the puppies are at risk too." Noah's face crumpled, though he remained silent. His hand tightened slightly on Luna's fur. "She's made it this far," Hannah said, a desperate edge to her voice. "She's a fighter." The vet nodded, already opening his bag. "Then let's give her all the help we can." Dr. Martinez worked quickly, his hands steady and sure, as he prepared a series of injections. "First, we need to get some fluids into her and start antibiotics for the infection," he explained. "Then we'll clean and treat those wounds properly." Hannah watched anxiously as the vet administered the medications, one after another. Luna barely reacted to the needles, too exhausted and in too much pain to notice this small additional discomfort. "Is she going to make it?" Hannah asked quietly, not wanting Noah to hear the fear in her voice. Dr. Martinez's expression was grave. "The next few hours will be critical," he said. "She's very weak and birth is traumatic even for healthy dogs." Noah hadn't moved from Luna's side. His small fingers continued their gentle stroking, offering comfort that somehow seemed to reach the dog despite her distress. Luna's eyes would occasionally flutter open to look at the boy, as if drawing strength from his presence. "I need to set up a proper birthing area," Dr. Martinez said, glancing around the small bathroom. "This tub isn't ideal." Hannah nodded. "We can move her to the living room. I'll get some clean blankets." While Hannah gathered supplies, Dr. Martinez carefully examined Luna's legs again. "These wounds are deep," he muttered, more to himself than to Hannah. "And they're not fresh. Someone left her like this for days, maybe longer." The thought made Hannah's stomach turn. What kind of person could do something so cruel? Together, they lifted Luna from the tub, using the now clean flannel shirt as a sling once more. The dog whimpered as they moved her, another contraction seizing her weakened body. "Easy, girl," Dr. Martinez murmured. "Almost there." They laid Luna on a nest of blankets Hannah had arranged in the center of the living room floor. The storm continued to rage outside, rain lashing against the windows, but inside, a different kind of storm was brewing as Luna's labor intensified. "The first puppy is coming," Dr. Martinez announced, positioning himself to assist if necessary. "Most dogs can deliver without help, but given her condition, I'll step in if there's any trouble." Noah sat cross-legged beside Luna's head, his hand never leaving her. Hannah marveled at her son's calm in the face of something that would frighten most children his age. Luna pushed, her entire body tensing with the effort. Minutes ticked by, the only sounds in the room being the rain outside and Luna's labored breathing. "Something's wrong," Dr. Martinez said finally, his brow furrowing. "She's too exhausted. She doesn't have the strength to push properly." Hannah's heart sank. "What can we do?" "I'll have to help," the vet said, already pulling on gloves from his bag. This first puppy needs to come out now, or we could lose them both. What followed was tense and frightening. Dr. Martinez worked with focused intensity, sometimes murmuring encouragement to Luna, sometimes giving terse instructions to Hannah. Noah watched it all, his eyes wide but unafraid, as if he understood perfectly what was happening. Finally, after what seemed like hours but was probably only minutes, Dr. Martinez carefully eased a tiny, wet bundle from Luna's body. "It's a girl," he announced, quickly wiping the membrane from the puppy's face and massaging its minuscule chest to stimulate breathing. For a terrifying moment, the puppy didn't move. Then, suddenly, it gave a tiny gasp, followed by a squeak that might have been its first attempt at a bark. Noah's face broke into a smile so radiant that Hannah felt tears spring to her eyes. This was the first time her son had truly smiled since the accident. It was as if some frozen part of him was beginning to thaw. Dr. Martinez handed the tiny puppy to Hannah. "Keep her warm while we deliver the rest," he instructed. Hannah cradled the newborn, marveling at how something so small could represent such an enormous triumph of life over cruelty. The puppy, still wet and wrinkled, nuzzled blindly against her hand, seeking warmth and nourishment. Luna delivered 5 more puppies over the next 2 hours. Each birth was a struggle, with Dr. Martinez having to assist more than he would with a healthy dog. But somehow, despite her weakened state, Luna fought to bring her babies into the world. The 5th puppy, however, wasn't breathing when it emerged. "No," Hannah whispered, watching as Dr. Martinez worked frantically to revive the tiny creature. He rubbed its chest, cleared its airways, even gave the smallest puffs of breath to its miniature muzzle. Nothing. "I'm sorry," he began to say, his voice heavy with defeat. But Noah wouldn't accept it. Before anyone could stop him, he reached out and took the lifeless puppy from the vet's hands. Hannah started to object, not wanting her son to face such a stark lesson in mortality, but something in Noah's expression stopped her. The boy cradled the puppy close to his chest, bending his head until his lips were near its ear. And then, the miracle happened. Noah spoke. His voice was rusty from disuse, barely audible over the storm outside, but it was unmistakably there. "Live," he whispered to the puppy. "Please live." Hannah froze, her heart hammering in her chest. Dr. Martinez looked up sharply, his hands stilling in their work. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the tiny puppy in Noah's hands twitched once, twice. Its little chest expanded in a desperate gasp for air, and then, incredibly, it began to squirm and squeak. "My God," Dr. Martinez breathed, staring at Noah with astonishment. "I don't know how, but you saved it." Noah looked up, his eyes meeting his mother's. Hannah couldn't breathe, couldn't speak. Her son had broken his silence to save a life. The final puppy arrived minutes later, smaller than the others but surprisingly vigorous. When all 6 had been cleaned and checked by Dr. Martinez, they were placed beside Luna, who, despite her exhaustion, immediately began to lick and nuzzle her offspring. 6 healthy puppies," Dr. Martinez said, shaking his head in wonder. "It's more than I hoped for, given her condition." Hannah couldn't take her eyes off Noah, who was watching the puppies with a soft expression that broke her heart and healed it all at once. "She needs to rest now," the vet continued, packing his equipment. "And she'll need medication for at least 2 weeks. Those wounds are serious, and there's still a risk of infection spreading." Hannah nodded, still dazed by everything that had happened. "Thank you. For coming out in the storm. For saving them." Dr. Martinez smiled, the weariness in his face softening. "Thank your son," he said quietly. "I've been a vet for 30 years, and I've never seen anything like what just happened." He wrote out detailed instructions for Luna's care, promised to return the following day to check on her, and then prepared to leave. The storm had lessened somewhat, though rain still fell steadily outside. At the door, Dr. Martinez paused. "Ms. Marshall," he said, his voice serious again. "What was done to that dog? It was criminal. Someone deliberately tried to kill her and her puppies. We should report this to the police." Hannah glanced back toward the living room, where Noah sat beside Luna and her puppies, his small face peaceful for the first time in months. "Tomorrow," she said. "Tonight, I just want to be grateful they're alive." The vet nodded in understanding. "Tomorrow, then. Get some rest, both of you." After he left, Hannah returned to the living room and sat down beside Noah. Luna was sleeping now, her puppies nestled against her belly, tiny mouths already finding their way to milk. "Noah," Hannah said softly, hardly daring to break the spell. "You spoke?" Her son looked up at her, something new in his eyes, something like hope. He opened his mouth, hesitated, then whispered, "To save her." Hannah couldn't hold back her tears any longer. She gathered Noah into her arms, holding him close, as silent sobs shook her body. Her son, her beautiful silent son, had found his voice again. That night, neither of them slept much. They took turns watching over Luna and her puppies, making sure the new mother had water, and that the heating pad Dr. Martinez had set up stayed at the right temperature. Noah seemed unwilling to leave Luna's side for more than a few minutes at a time, as if afraid she might disappear if he looked away. Dawn broke clear and cold, the storm having moved on during the night. Hannah made breakfast, simple toast and eggs, which they ate sitting on the floor beside Luna. "You know we can't keep them all," Hannah said gently, watching as Noah carefully stroked one of the puppies with a single finger. "Once they're old enough to leave their mother, we'll need to find homes for the puppies." Noah looked up at her, his expression solemn. He didn't speak again. Those two precious words seemed to have exhausted his courage for now, but his eyes asked the question clearly enough. "Yes," Hannah said, smiling through fresh tears. "Luna can stay with us, if she wants to." As if understanding, Luna lifted her head and licked Noah's hand, her tail thumping weakly against the blankets. Later that morning, Hannah called the local police station. Officer Reyes, a woman Hannah knew casually from the diner where she worked, arrived within the hour. "I've never seen anything like this," Officer Reyes said, kneeling to examine Luna's injuries, which Dr. Martinez had cleaned and bandaged the night before. "Who would do such a thing?" Hannah shook her head. "I have no idea. We found her in the woods, chained to a stake, half buried in mud. Someone wanted her to die out there, her and her puppies." Officer Reyes's expression hardened. "I'll file a report for animal cruelty. Can you show me exactly where you found her? There might be evidence we can collect." Hannah glanced at Noah, who was back at his usual post beside Luna. "I don't want to leave them." "I understand," Officer Reyes said. "Maybe tomorrow, when your son's father or another relative can stay with them?" Hannah's chest tightened. "It's just the two of us," she said quietly. "But my neighbor, Mrs. Peterson, might be willing to sit with them for an hour or so." Officer Reyes nodded. "That would work. The sooner we can investigate the scene, the better our chances of finding whoever did this." After the officer left, promising to return the next day, Hannah went to check on Luna again. The German Shepherd was awake, watching her puppies with tired but alert eyes. When Hannah approached, Luna's tail gave its now familiar gentle thump of greeting. "You're part of our family now," Hannah told her, stroking the dog's head. "We'll keep you safe." Noah, who had been rearranging the blankets around the puppies, looked up at his mother's words. For a moment, something like fear flickered across his face. "What is it, sweetie?" Hannah asked. Noah pointed to Luna, then to the door, then made a motion like someone taking something away. Hannah understood immediately. "No one is going to take her from us," she assured him. "She's ours now." But even as she said the words, Hannah wondered if it was a promise she could keep. Luna might belong to someone who might come looking for their dog and her valuable purebred puppies. The thought troubled her throughout the day, but she pushed it aside, focusing instead on the practical matters at hand. Luna needed regular medication, fresh bandages, and special food to help her recover her strength and produce milk for the puppies. Dr. Martinez returned that afternoon, as promised. He examined Luna and pronounced himself cautiously optimistic. "She's responding well to the antibiotics," he said, replacing the bandages on her legs. "And she's an excellent mother, despite everything she's been through." Noah beamed at this praise of his rescued friend. He had been following the vet around all afternoon, watching his every move with fascination. "Your son has a natural way with animals," Dr. Martinez observed as they watched Noah carefully offering Luna water from a bowl. "Has he ever thought about becoming a veterinarian?" Hannah smiled sadly. "He's only 5, she said. And until yesterday, he hadn't spoken a word in 8 months. The vet looked startled. "May I ask why?" Hannah hesitated, then decided there was no harm in telling him. "There was an accident," she said quietly, making sure Noah couldn't overhear. "My husband, Noah's father, was killed. Noah was in the car. He saw everything. The memories threatened to overwhelm her, and she took a deep breath before continuing. He stopped speaking after that. The doctors call it selective mutism, brought on by trauma. Dr. Martinez's eyes softened with understanding. And yesterday, he spoke to save the puppy. Hannah nodded, wiping away a tear. 2 words, the first I've heard from him since the funeral. The vet glanced at Noah, who was now lying on his stomach beside Luna, eye to eye with the dog. There's a special bond there, he said. I've seen animals help people heal in ways that medicine can't explain. Maybe Luna needed Noah as much as he needed her. The thought comforted Hannah as she prepared dinner that evening. She made simple sandwiches, which they again ate in the living room, unwilling to leave Luna and her puppies even for the time it would take to eat at the kitchen table. After Noah had fallen asleep, curled up on the floor beside Luna, his small hand resting on her side, Hannah sat in the dim light, watching them both. For the first time in months, she felt something like peace. The ringing of the phone shattered the quiet. Hannah jumped up quickly to answer it before it could wake Noah. "Hello?" she said softly, stepping into the kitchen. "Hannah Marshall?" a man's voice asked. It was unfamiliar, deep and authoritative. "Yes, that's me. My name is Sergeant James Keller with the K9 unit of the state police. I understand you found a German Shepherd yesterday." Hannah's blood ran cold. How had he heard about Luna so quickly? Officer Reyes had only taken her report that morning. "Yes," she said cautiously. "She was abandoned in the woods, badly injured." There was a pause. "Ms. Marshall, I need to inform you that the dog you found is police property. Her name is Raya, and she's a trained police K9. Hannah's heart began to race. "That's impossible," she said. "Her tag says Luna, and she was deliberately tied up and buried, left to die. No police department would do that to one of their dogs." Another pause, longer this time. When Sergeant Keller spoke again, his voice had an edge to it. "Ms. Marshall, I'm not at liberty to discuss the details over the phone. I'll be coming to your residence tomorrow morning to retrieve the dog and her puppies." "No," Hannah said, surprised at her own defiance flooding through her. "No, I don't think so. This dog was abandoned and tortured. My son found her and saved her life. She's ours now." "Ms. Marshall," the sergeant's voice hardened, "that dog is state property. Keeping her would be theft of police equipment, which is a felony offense. I strongly advise you to cooperate." Fear and anger warred within Hannah. "I want to see some paperwork," she demanded. "Proof that this dog belongs to your department, and I want an explanation for why she was chained and buried in the mud if she's so valuable to you." "I'll bring all the necessary documentation tomorrow," Sergeant Keller said, his tone clipped. "Be ready to hand over the dog and puppies by 9 a.m. Before Hannah could respond, the line went dead. She stood in the darkened kitchen, the phone still clutched in her hand, trying to process what had just happened. Luna, or Raya, if the sergeant was to be believed, was a police dog. It made no sense. Why would a valuable K9 be abandoned to die? And how had this Sergeant Keller learned about her so quickly? Hannah returned to the living room, her mind racing. Noah was still asleep, his face peaceful in the soft glow of the nightlight. Luna watched Hannah with those intelligent amber eyes, as if sensing her distress. "I won't let them take you," Hannah whispered, kneeling beside the dog. "Not until I know exactly what's going on here." She reached for her phone and called Dr. Martinez. Despite the late hour, he answered on the 3rd ring. "It's Hannah Marshall," she said without preamble. "Something strange is happening. A man claiming to be from the state police K9 unit just called. He says Luna belongs to them and he's coming to take her tomorrow." "That doesn't sound right," Dr. Martinez said, instantly alert. "Why would a police dog be abandoned like that? Did he explain?" "Number?" "He refused to discuss it over the phone, said he'd bring documentation tomorrow." There was a pause as the vet considered. "I don't like this," he said finally. "At the very least, Luna, or Raya, if that's her name, isn't fit to be moved yet. She needs at least another week of rest and medication before she should travel, and the puppies are too young to be separated from her." "Will you tell him that?" Hannah asked. "He might listen to a medical professional." "I'll do better than that, doctor," Martinez said firmly. "I'll be there when he arrives. No one's taken that dog anywhere until we get some answers." Relief washed over Hannah. "Thank you," she said, her voice breaking. "I don't know what's going on, but something feels very wrong about this." After hanging up, Hannah made a decision. She couldn't wait until morning to learn more. Moving quietly so as not to wake Noah, she retrieved her laptop and sat on the couch where she could still see Luna and the puppies. First, she searched for Sergeant James Keller, State Police K-9 Unit. Nothing came up. No mentions in newspaper articles, no listings on the official state police website, nothing. That in itself wasn't necessarily suspicious. Not all police officers had an online presence, but it did nothing to ease her concerns. Next, she tried police dog abandoned. The results were heartbreaking. Stories of retired K-9s left at shelters, cases of abuse and neglect, but nothing that matched Luna's situation. Growing more frustrated, Hannah tried a different approach. She searched for German Shepherd military tag Luna. To her surprise, several results appeared, linking to articles about military working dogs. She clicked on the first one, a piece about the naming conventions for service dogs. As she read, a chill ran down her spine. According to the article, Luna wasn't just a pretty name, meaning moon. It was also an acronym used by certain specialized military units. Loyalty under necessary aggression. Military, not police. Hannah's fingers flew over the keyboard as she searched for more information. Military working dogs were sometimes transferred to police departments after their service, but they were valuable, highly trained assets. No legitimate organization would simply abandon one, unless there was something about this particular dog that someone wanted to hide. Hannah was so absorbed in her research that she didn't notice Noah stirring until he was standing beside her, rubbing his eyes sleepily. "Hey, sweetie," she said, closing the laptop quickly. "You should be asleep." Noah pointed to Luna, then made a questioning gesture. "She's fine," Hannah assured him. "Just sleeping?" Noah seemed satisfied with this and climbed onto the couch beside his mother, nestling against her side. Within minutes, he was asleep again, his small body warm against hers. Hannah held him close, her mind still racing. Someone was coming for Luna tomorrow, someone who might not be who they claimed to be. She needed to be prepared. Carefully, so as not to wake Noah again, she reached for her phone and sent a text to Officer Reyes, explaining the situation and asking her to come to the house before 9 a.m. Then she texted Mrs. Peterson next door, asking if she could take Noah for a few hours in the morning, if necessary. Finally, Hannah allowed herself to close her eyes, though sleep seemed impossible. Whatever happened tomorrow, one thing was certain. She wouldn't let anyone take Luna without a fight, not after everything they'd been through to save her. As she drifted into an uneasy doze, Hannah could have sworn she heard Luna's soft whimper. Not of pain this time, but almost like a warning. Do you think Sergeant Keller is telling the truth about Luna being a police dog? Or is there something more sinister going on? Share your theories in the comments. Hannah woke with a start, momentarily disoriented to find herself on the couch rather than in her bed. Dawn light filtered through the curtains, casting long shadows across the living room. Noah was still curled against her side, his breathing deep and even. She glanced at her watch, 6:15 a.m., less than 3 hours until Sergeant Keller's promised arrival. Carefully, she extricated herself from Noah's grasp and padded across the room to check on Luna. The German Shepherd was already awake, amber eyes tracking Hannah's movements. Her 6 puppies nursed contentedly, tiny paws kneading against her belly. "Morning, girl," Hannah whispered, kneeling beside her. Luna's tail thumped weakly against the blankets, a small gesture that somehow conveyed enormous trust. Hannah checked the bandages on Luna's legs. The wounds still looked angry and painful, but there was no fresh bleeding. The antibiotics seemed to be working. "No one's taking you away from us," Hannah promised, gently stroking Luna's head. "Not until we get some real answers." As if in response, Luna licked Hannah's hand, her gaze unwavering. Hannah's phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Officer Reyes. "On duty at 8. We'll come by before your visitor arrives." Relief washed over Hannah. Having a legitimate police officer present would help, especially if this Sergeant Keller turned out to be less than forthcoming. Another text arrived moments later, this one from Mrs. Peterson, confirming she could take Noah if necessary. Everything was falling into place, but Hannah still felt a gnawing anxiety in the pit of her stomach. She moved to the kitchen to make coffee, her mind racing through possible scenarios. What if Keller was legitimate and had legal documentation giving him rights to Luna? What if he brought backup? What if... The sound of small footsteps interrupted her spiraling thoughts. Noah appeared in the doorway, his hair tousled from sleep, his eyes still heavy-lidded. "Good morning, sweetie," Hannah said, forcing a smile. "Did you sleep okay?" Noah nodded, then pointed toward the living room with a questioning look. "Luna's fine," Hannah assured him. "The puppies, too. They're all doing great." Relief flooded Noah's face. He moved to the refrigerator and pulled it open, pointing inside. "Hungry, huh?" Hannah said. "Let's make some breakfast. We've got a big day ahead." As they ate their cereal, Hannah weighed whether to tell Noah about the impending visit from Sergeant Keller. Her instinct was to protect him from worry, but after everything they'd been through, she felt he deserved the truth, or at least a version of it. "Noah," she began carefully, "someone is coming to talk to us about Luna today." Noah's spoon froze halfway to his mouth, his eyes suddenly wide and alert. "This person says that Luna might have been a working dog, like the ones that help police officers. He wants to talk to us about her." Noah's expression darkened. He shook his head vehemently, then pointed to Luna in the living room and back to himself. "I know," Hannah said softly. "She's yours, ours, and I'm not going to let anyone take her without making absolutely sure it's the right thing to do. That's why Dr. Martinez is coming back this morning, and Officer Reyes, too." Noah seemed only slightly reassured. He abandoned his cereal and went to sit beside Luna, his small body a protective barrier between her and the door. Hannah watched him, her heart aching. In just 2 days, Luna had become integral to their lives, a catalyst for Noah's emerging from his silence. The thought of losing her now was unbearable. At precisely 8:15, Officer Reyes arrived, her police cruiser parked conspicuously in front of the house. "Thank you for coming," Hannah said, ushering her inside. "Of course," Reyes replied, her expression serious. "I did some checking after your text. There is a Sergeant James Keller with the state police, but he's not registered with the K-9 unit. He works in a different division entirely." Hannah's suspicions deepened. "So he lied about that?" "Not necessarily," Reyes cautioned. "He could be on a special assignment, or there could be some simple explanation, but it's enough to warrant caution." They moved to the living room, where Noah sat vigilantly beside Luna. Officer Reyes knelt to examine the dog and her puppies. "She's looking better than yesterday," she observed. "Still, she's clearly in no condition to be moved." "That's what Dr. Martinez said," Hannah agreed. "He should be here any minute." As if on cue, there was a knock at the door. Hannah opened it to find not Dr. Martinez, but a tall, broad-shouldered man in a crisp blue uniform. His face was expressionless, his posture rigid with authority. "Ms. Marshall?" he asked, though it wasn't really a question. "Sergeant James Keller, State Police." He flashed a badge too quickly for Hannah to properly examine it. Hannah felt her pulse quicken. "You're early," she said, not moving from the doorway. "I prefer punctuality," he replied coolly. "May I come in? I've brought the documentation we discussed." Hannah hesitated, then stepped aside. "Officer Reyes from Pineville PD is here as well," she said, watching his reaction carefully. If Keller was surprised or concerned by this information, he didn't show it. He simply nodded and followed Hannah to the living room. Officer Reyes stood as they entered, her hand instinctively moving to rest on her service belt. "Sergeant Keller," she greeted him with professional courtesy. "I wasn't aware the state police had an interest in this case." Keller's eyes narrowed slightly. "This isn't a case, officer. It's a simple matter of retrieving state property." He glanced at Luna, and something flickered across his face. Recognition, certainly, but also something else. Something like wariness. "You said you have documentation?" Hannah prompted, stepping between Keller and Luna. "Yes," he replied, withdrawing a folder from his jacket. "Everything's in order. The dog, designation K9-R47, named Raya, was part of a specialized training program. Unfortunately, she proved unsuitable and was scheduled for rehoming. There was a miscommunication that led to her temporary misplacement." "Misplacement?" Hannah repeated incredulously. "She was chained to a stake and buried in mud. She nearly died. Her puppies nearly died." Keller's expression remained impassive. "An unfortunate situation that is under internal investigation. I'm not at liberty to discuss the details." Another knock at the door announced Dr. Martinez's arrival. Hannah excused herself to let him in, quickly explaining the situation in hushed tones. When they returned to the living room, tension hung in the air like a physical presence. Noah had positioned himself more firmly beside Luna, one hand protectively on her head. The German Shepherd was fully alert now, her ears forward, her gaze fixed unwaveringly on Sergeant Keller. "Dr. Martinez," Keller acknowledged the vet with a curt nod. "I understand this dog is under your care. Is she fit for transport?" Dr. Martinez shook his head decisively. "Absolutely not. She has severe lacerations on her hind legs with active infection. She's malnourished, dehydrated, and nursing 6 newborn puppies. Moving her now would pose a significant risk to her health and the health of the puppies." Keller frowned. "I've brought appropriate transport and can ensure she receives continued veterinary care." "With all due respect, Sergeant," Dr. Martinez said firmly, "as the attending veterinarian, I cannot ethically approve her removal at this time. She needs at least a week of rest and continued treatment before she can be safely relocated." Hannah watched the exchange with growing hope. Maybe they could at least buy some time. Officer Reyes stepped forward. "Sergeant Keller, may I see the documentation you've brought?" Keller handed over the folder with obvious reluctance. Reyes examined the papers carefully, her brow furrowing as she read. "These forms don't specify which unit this dog was assigned to," she noted, "and there's no record of the miscommunication you mentioned." "Those details are classified," Keller replied stiffly. "Convenient," Hannah muttered. Keller shot her a cold look. "Ms. Marshall, I understand your attachment to the animal, but this is a matter of state security. The dog must be returned to our custody." Noah, who had been silent throughout the exchange, suddenly stood up. His small face was set in an expression of such fierce determination that all the adults fell quiet, watching him. He pointed to Luna, then to the wounds on her legs, then to Keller. His meaning couldn't have been clearer. "You did this to her." Keller's composure slipped for the first time. "That's not," he began, then stopped, visibly regaining control. "The boy doesn't understand the situation." "I think he understands perfectly," Hannah said, moving to stand beside her son. "Luna was abused, intentionally hurt, and left to die. And for some reason, you're desperate to get her back before we can figure out why." The sergeant's eyes hardened. "Ms. Marshall, I'm trying to be patient, but my orders are clear. That dog is coming with me today, one way or another." "Are you threatening us?" Officer Reyes asked sharply. Before Keller could respond, the tension was broken by a new sound, a deep, rumbling growl. Luna, despite her weakened state, had raised her head, her lips pulled back to reveal sharp teeth. The growl wasn't directed at Hannah or Noah, or even Officer Reyes. It was aimed directly at Sergeant Keller. Everyone froze. Luna's reaction was unmistakable. She knew this man, and she feared him. "She recognizes you," Hannah said slowly, realization dawning, "and she's terrified of you." Keller's hand moved subtly toward his hip, toward his weapon. "I wouldn't," Officer Reyes warned, her own hand now resting openly on her service pistol. "Sergeant, I think we need to take a step back and sort this out properly. If this dog was truly state property, there are protocols to follow. Dr. Martinez has made it clear that moving her now would endanger her health. I suggest we reconvene when she's medically cleared for transport." Keller stood rigid, clearly weighing his options. After a long, tense moment, he gave a tight nod. "Fine, 1 week. But I'll be filing reports with your superiors, Officer Reyes. And Ms. Marshall, do not attempt to relocate the dog. That would be considered theft of government property." With that, he turned and strode from the house, his back stiff with barely contained anger. As soon as the door closed behind him, Hannah sagged with relief. Luna's growl subsided, though she remained vigilant, her eyes fixed on the door, as if expecting Keller to return at any moment. "That man is hiding something," Dr. Martinez said, voicing what they were all thinking. Officer Reyes nodded grimly. "Those papers looked official, but something's not right. I'm going to make some calls, see what I can find out about this specialized training program he mentioned." "Thank you," Hannah said fervently. I can't believe someone would do this to her." She gestured to Luna's injured legs. "Chain her up, bury her, leave her to die with her puppies. It's inhuman." "Unfortunately, I've seen cruelty to animals before," Dr. Martinez said sadly. "But this feels different, more calculated." Noah had returned to Luna's side, his small hand stroking her head soothingly. The German Shepherd had calmed considerably, though she still watched the door. 1 week, Hannah mused. That's not much time. I'll do what I can to find answers, Officer Reyes promised. And in the meantime, document everything. Luna's condition, her recovery, all of it. If this does end up in some kind of legal battle, you'll want records. After Officer Reyes and Dr. Martinez left, with promises to return the following day, Hannah sat beside Noah and Luna, her mind racing. We're going to figure this out, she told them both. Whatever Keller is hiding, we'll find it. Noah nodded solemnly, then did something that took Hannah's breath away. He leaned down to Luna's ear and whispered, clearly enough for Hannah to hear, "We'll protect you." 3 words, 3 precious words that brought tears to Hannah's eyes. Her son was speaking again, and it was Luna who had brought him back. The rest of the day passed in a blur of caring for Luna and her puppies, fielding calls from Officer Reyes with updates on her investigation, and trying to maintain some semblance of normality for Noah's sake. By evening, Hannah was exhausted but determined. She waited until Noah had fallen asleep beside Luna, then returned to her laptop. Her search the previous night had yielded tantalizing clues about military working dogs, but nothing specific that could explain Luna's situation. Tonight, she decided to try a different approach. Instead of searching for information about the dog, she searched for Sergeant James Keller. It took hours of digging through public records, news archives, and social media, but eventually, Hannah found something. A 3-year-old newspaper article about a military contractor called Cerberus Security Solutions. The article was primarily about the company's lucrative government contracts, but there, in a photo of the company's leadership team, stood a younger James Keller, identified as the Director of Special Projects. He's not just police, Hannah murmured to herself. He's private sector, or was. Further searches revealed that Cerberus specialized in enhanced canine training for military and law enforcement applications. Their website was sparse on details, but full of impressive-sounding jargon about next-generation capabilities and specialized sensory development. Hannah scrolled through page after page, searching for anything that might explain Luna's condition or Keller's interest in her. Finally, buried in a press release from 2 years ago, she found a cryptic reference to Project Moonlight, a collaboration between Cerberus and an unnamed government agency to develop canines with extraordinary sensory capabilities for classified applications. Moonlight. Luna meant moon. It couldn't be a coincidence. Hannah's phone rang, startling her. It was Officer Reyes. "Sorry for calling so late," the officer said without preamble, "but I found something you should know. The K9 unit has no record of a dog designated K9R47 or named Raya. In fact, they've never used that designation system. And Sergeant Keller, he's on administrative leave, has been for 6 months." Hannah's pulse quickened. "So he lied about everything." "Looks that way," Reyes confirmed. "I've reported this up my chain of command, but to be honest, I'm not sure how much help we'll get. Keller still has friends in the department, and without knowing what's really going on." "I might know," Hannah said, and quickly explained what she'd discovered about Cerberus Security and Project Moonlight. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "Hannah," Officer Reyes finally said, her voice grave, "be careful. If you're right, if this is about some classified military project, these people play by different rules. They won't just give up." "I know," Hannah said, a chill running down her spine. "But neither will I." After hanging up, Hannah returned to the living room. Noah and Luna were both asleep, the puppies nestled between them in a tangle of warmth and safety. The sight strengthened Hannah's resolve. Whatever Luna had been part of, whatever had been done to her, it was over now. She was part of their family, and Hannah would fight to keep her safe. The next morning, Dr. Martinez arrived early to check on Luna. He was pleased with her progress. The infection in her legs was responding to the antibiotics, and she was producing plenty of milk for her puppies. "She's a fighter," he said admiringly as he replaced her bandages. "Most dogs in her condition wouldn't have survived, let alone been able to care for a litter." Noah watched the examination with intense focus, handing the vet supplies before he even asked for them. Dr. Martinez smiled at the boy. "You've got a natural talent," he told Noah. "You'd make a fine veterinarian someday." Noah ducked his head, but Hannah could see he was pleased by the praise. "Dr. Martinez," Hannah said when Noah had returned to Luna's side, "what do you know about programs that train dogs for special military purposes? The vet looked surprised by the question. Not much beyond what you might read in the news. Why? Hannah explained her findings from the night before. Keller's connection to Cerberus security, the mysterious Project Moonlight, the inconsistencies in his story. Dr. Martinez frowned. I've heard rumors about private contractors pushing the envelope with animal training, using methods that would never be approved by legitimate veterinary oversight. But I had no idea it was happening this close to home. What kind of methods? Hannah asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know. The vet hesitated. There are ethical ways to train working dogs, positive reinforcement, building on their natural abilities and instincts. But there are also shortcuts. Drugs to enhance certain sensory capabilities, aversive training techniques, even surgical modifications in some extreme cases. Hannah felt sick. Could that explain Luna's injuries? The chain, the wire? Possibly, Doctor, Martinez said grimly. Or it could be punishment for failing to perform as expected. German Shepherds are intelligent, sensitive animals. If she resisted their training methods or failed their tests. He didn't need to finish the thought. Hannah could all too easily imagine Luna being discarded like a broken tool, her puppies considered an inconvenient complication. What can we do? She asked. Dr. Martinez considered for a moment. We need evidence of what they were doing, something concrete that can't be dismissed as a training accident or a rogue employee. And we need allies, people who will believe us and have the authority to act. Officer Reyes is trying, but she's just one person in a small-town police department. I might be able to help there, the vet said thoughtfully. I have a colleague who works with an animal rights organization that specializes in cases involving military and police working dogs. Let me reach out to her. For the first time since Keller's visit, Hannah felt a glimmer of hope. They weren't alone in this fight. The next few days fell into a pattern. Hannah would go to work in the morning, leaving Noah in Mrs. Peterson's care. Dr. Martinez would visit daily to check on Luna, whose strength was returning remarkably quickly. Officer Reyes would stop by when she could, bringing updates on her investigation, which was proceeding slowly, hampered by bureaucratic stonewalling. In the evenings, Hannah would continue her research, building a case against Cerberus security and trying to understand exactly what had been done to Luna. Noah, meanwhile, was undergoing a transformation of his own. Though still not speaking freely, he had begun to whisper to Luna words that only the dog could hear. Sometimes Hannah would catch phrases, "good girl," or "you're safe now," that brought tears to her eyes. On the fourth day after Keller's visit, Dr. Martinez arrived with a visitor, a trim, professional-looking woman he introduced as Doctor. Samantha Chen, a veterinary ethicist with an organization called Guardians of Loyal Service, GOLS. We advocate for the welfare of working dogs, Dr. Chen explained as she examined Luna with gentle, practiced hands, and investigate cases of abuse or misuse. Hannah watched anxiously as Dr. Chen conducted a thorough examination, taking photographs of Luna's injuries and making detailed notes. These wounds on her legs, Dr. Chen said, her voice clinically detached but her eyes blazing with suppressed anger, they're consistent with restraint injuries we've seen in cases of prolonged immobilization. Was she still chained when you found her? Yes, Hannah confirmed. Chained to a stake and half buried in mud. Dr. Chen nodded grimly, then carefully parted the fur on Luna's head, revealing a small, nearly invisible scar behind her ear. As I suspected, she murmured. She's been chipped, but not with a standard microchip. What is it? Hannah asked. It's a more advanced transponder, often used in classified projects, Dr. Chen explained. It can transmit data about the dog's location, vital signs, and in some cases, even neurological activity. The implications were chilling. They were monitoring her brain? Dr. Chen's expression was grave. Possibly. Without removing and analyzing the chip, I can't say for certain, but it would be consistent with the rumors we've heard about Project Moonlight. Noah, who had been sitting quietly nearby, suddenly pointed to Luna's eyes, then to his own, making a back-and-forth gesture with his hand. Dr. Chen watched him curiously. What's he trying to say? Hannah shook her head. I'm not sure. Noah repeated the gesture more emphatically, then closed his eyes and pointed around the room, as if seeing with them closed. Understanding dawned on Dr. Martinez's face. He's asking if Luna can see things that we can't. Can Luna see in ways that normal dogs can't? Is Sergeant Keller hiding even darker secrets than we thought? Tell us what you think might happen next." Dr. Chen's expression changed from professional detachment to intense interest. "Extraordinary sensory perception," she murmured, almost to herself. "It fits with the rumors about Project Moonlight." "What rumors?" Hannah asked, a chill running down her spine. Dr. Chen hesitated, glancing at Noah. Hannah understood her concern. This wasn't a conversation for a child's ears. But Noah had already been through so much, had already seen things no child should see. And Luna was his dog now. He deserved to know what they might be facing. "It's okay," Hannah assured her. "He needs to hear this." Dr. Chen nodded and continued, her voice low and measured. "For the past few years, there have been whispers in the military working dog community about a classified program developing what they call enhanced sensory canines. Dogs trained, or modified, to detect things beyond the normal canine range." "Modified how?" Hannah asked, though she dreaded the answer. "We don't know exactly, Doctor," Chen admitted. "But based on what we've pieced together, they were experimenting with ways to amplify canines' already extraordinary senses, their ability to detect chemicals, electromagnetic fields, even subtle changes in human physiology." Noah was listening with rapt attention, his eyes wide. He pointed to Luna, then to his head, making a gesture like something exploding outward. "Yes," Dr. Chen said, addressing him directly. "Something like that. Dogs already have incredible senses. They can smell cancer, detect seizures before they happen, find people buried under rubble. The program was trying to push those abilities even further." Hannah felt sick. "And Luna, Raya, was part of this program?" "It seems likely, Doctor," Chen confirmed. "The chip, her history, Keller's determination to get her back. It all fits. What doesn't fit is why they abandoned her if she was so valuable." Noah made another gesture, pointing to Luna's swollen belly, then making a rocking motion with his arms. "The puppies," Dr. Martinez translated. "You think it was because she was pregnant?" Noah nodded emphatically. Dr. Chen's eyes widened. "That actually makes sense. Pregnancy causes massive hormonal and physiological changes. If they had modified her brain chemistry or nervous system in some way, pregnancy might have disrupted whatever changes they had made. So they got rid of her," Hannah said bitterly. "Threw her away like garbage because she was no longer useful to them." "But now they want her back," Dr. Martinez pointed out. "Why, if she failed their program?" Dr. Chen looked thoughtful. "Two possibilities. One, they're trying to cover their tracks, eliminate evidence of an unethical program. Or two, there's something about her or her puppies that's still valuable to them." The implications hung heavily in the air. If Luna had been part of a classified military experiment, if her puppies might have inherited whatever modifications had been made to her, then Keller and whoever he worked for wouldn't simply give up and walk away. "We need to move her," Hannah decided suddenly. "Keller knows where we live, when he comes back, when his week is up." "I agree, Doctor," Chen said. "But it needs to be somewhere secure, somewhere they wouldn't think to look." Dr. Martinez cleared his throat. "I might have a place. My sister owns a small farm about 60 miles from here, very remote, no close neighbors. Luna and her puppies could recover there safely." Hope flared in Hannah's chest. "Could we go soon? Like, tomorrow?" The vet nodded. "I'll call my sister right away, and I'll bring my truck with a special carrier for Luna and the puppies." Noah, who had been watching the adults intently, suddenly tugged at Hannah's sleeve. When she looked down, he pointed to Luna, then to the 6 puppies, then made a counting gesture on his fingers. "What is it, sweetie?" Hannah asked, puzzled. Noah repeated the gesture more emphatically, pointing to each puppy in turn, then holding up 6 fingers. Then he held up 7 fingers and pointed to Luna's belly with a questioning look. "7 puppies?" Hannah said, confused. "No, there are 6. Noah shook his head vigorously, his expression frustrated. He held up 6 fingers, pointed to the visible puppies, then held up a 7th finger and made a hiding motion. Understanding dawned on Dr. Martinez's face. He's asking if there could be another puppy still inside her. Dr. Chen immediately moved to examine Luna again, this time focusing on her abdomen. She palpated gently, her expression intent. "I don't feel anything," she said after a moment. "And it would be unusual for there to be such a long delay between puppies." Why do you think there's another one, Noah? Noah looked at Luna, then closed his eyes. When he opened them again, he held up 7 fingers once more, his expression certain. Let me do an ultrasound, Dr. Chen decided, reaching for her bag. I brought portable equipment just in case. As the adults prepared for the procedure, Hannah knelt beside her son. Noah, she asked softly, how do you know there might be another puppy? Noah hesitated, then leaned close to her ear and whispered, Luna told me. Hannah felt goosebumps rise on her arms. Before she could question him further, Dr. Chen called them over. The gel will feel cold, she warned Luna as she spread it over her belly. The German Shepherd remained calm, watching the proceedings with intelligent eyes. The room fell silent as Dr. Chen moved the ultrasound wand over Luna's abdomen, all eyes fixed on the small screen. For several minutes, there was nothing unusual, just the expected post-birth images of a dog who had recently delivered puppies. And then, suddenly, there it was, a tiny, pulsing form, nearly hidden behind Luna's bladder. My God, Dr. Chen breathed. There is another puppy. It's alive, but it's not in the birth canal. She frowned, adjusting the wand slightly. It's almost like it's in a separate pouch or chamber. I've never seen anything like this. Noah didn't look surprised. He simply nodded, as if this confirmed what he already knew. Is it in danger? Hannah asked. Can Luna deliver it naturally? Dr. Chen shook her head slowly. I don't know. This isn't a normal presentation. We might need to consider a C-section, but given Luna's weakened state and the infection in her system, surgery carries significant risks. The room fell silent as they all contemplated this new complication. It was Noah who broke the silence, moving to kneel beside Luna. He placed his small hand on her belly, directly over where the hidden puppy lay, and closed his eyes. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, Luna let out a soft whine, not of pain, but almost like communication. She shifted position slightly, her body tensing. She's having a contraction, Dr. Chen said, watching the ultrasound screen intently. The puppy is moving. Over the next 30 minutes, they watched in amazement as the hidden puppy gradually shifted position, seemingly responding to Noah's touch and Luna's contractions. Finally, it moved into the birth canal. It's coming, Dr. Chen announced. Get ready. Luna pushed, her body straining with effort. Dr. Martinez stepped in to help, his hands gentle but firm as he assisted the delivery. With one final push, the 7th puppy emerged, smaller than the others, with a distinctive white star-shaped mark on its chest. It's a boy, Doctor, Martinez said, quickly clearing the puppy's airways and rubbing it to stimulate breathing. For a terrifying moment, the tiny creature lay still. Then, just as with the 5th puppy, Noah leaned down and whispered something in its ear, words too soft for the adults to hear. The puppy gave a tiny gasp, then began to squirm and squeak, its little legs paddling the air. Another miracle, Dr. Martinez murmured, carefully placing the newborn against Luna's belly. The mother immediately began cleaning it, her tongue gentle against its damp fur. Dr. Chen sat back, her expression a mixture of amazement and scientific curiosity. In 15 years of veterinary practice, I've never seen anything like this, she admitted. How did you know, Noah? Noah simply shrugged, a small, secretive smile playing on his lips. Later, after Dr. Chen and Dr. Martinez had left to make arrangements for moving Luna and her puppies, Hannah sat with Noah in the dimming evening light. Noah, she said carefully, how did you know about the 7th puppy? Did Luna really tell you? Noah nodded solemnly. How? Hannah pressed gently. How did she tell you? Noah seemed to consider the question, as if searching for words to explain something complex. Finally, he leaned close and whispered, I see what she sees. Feel what she feels. Hannah's breath caught. Since when? Since we found her, Noah whispered back. When I touched her belly in the mud. A shiver ran down Hannah's spine. Was this what Project Moonlight had been trying to achieve? A dog whose perceptions could somehow be shared with humans? And if so, why was Noah able to connect with Luna when others apparently couldn't? Questions swirled in Hannah's mind, but she pushed them aside for now. What mattered was keeping Luna and her puppies safe, including the special 7th one with the star on its chest. The next morning dawned clear and cold. Hannah had spent a restless night packing essentials and making arrangements for her unexpected absence from work. Thankfully, her boss at the diner had been understanding when she'd explained that a family emergency required her to leave town for a few days. Dr. Martinez arrived just after sunrise with his truck, a large dog carrier padded with blankets, and a smaller carrier for the puppies. Noah helped transfer Luna and her babies, taking special care with the seventh puppy, which seemed smaller and more delicate than its siblings. "My sister is expecting you," Dr. Martinez told Hannah as he handed her a map with the route marked. "The farm is quite isolated. No cell service, but there's a landline. The nearest neighbor is 5 miles away." "Thank you," Hannah said fervently, "for everything you've done." The vet smiled, his weathered face crinkling. "Luna chose well when she sent Noah to find her. Now go before the morning traffic picks up." Hannah checked one last time to make sure Luna and the puppies were secure in their carriers, then started the truck. Noah sat beside her, unusually alert and watchful for such an early hour. They had just turned onto the main road leading out of town when Noah suddenly stiffened, his eyes widening in alarm. He pointed frantically at the rearview mirror. Hannah glanced back and felt her heart drop. A dark SUV had pulled out behind them, keeping a careful distance but unmistakably following their route. "It could be coincidence," Hannah said, trying to sound more confident than she felt. "Lots of people use this road to get to the highway." But when she made a deliberate wrong turn onto a side street, the SUV followed. When she made another turn, doubling back toward town, the SUV did the same. They were definitely being followed. "Hold on," Hannah told Noah, her voice tight. She pressed the accelerator, the truck lurching forward with more speed than grace. The SUV immediately increased its pace, closing the distance between them. Hannah's mind raced. The town police station was only a few blocks away. If she could reach it, if Officer Reyes was on duty, she made a sharp right, tires squealing in protest. Noah braced himself against the dashboard, his small face a mask of determination rather than fear. The SUV followed, now close enough that Hannah could see the driver through her rearview mirror, a man in sunglasses, his expression grim. "Almost there," Hannah muttered, more to herself than to Noah. The police station was just ahead, its brick facade a welcome sight. She pulled into the parking lot with a screech of brakes, honking desperately. The SUV slowed but didn't follow them in, instead cruising past slowly, the driver watching them through tinted windows. Officer Reyes emerged from the station, hand instinctively moving to her weapon when she saw Hannah's panicked face. "Someone's following us," Hannah blurted as soon as Reyes approached. "A black SUV. It just passed by." Reyes immediately scanned the street, but the SUV had already disappeared around a corner. "Get inside," she ordered, helping Hannah and Noah out of the truck. Once they were safely in the station, Hannah explained their plan to relocate Luna and the puppies, and how they'd been followed almost immediately after leaving home. "They must have been watching the house," Reyes concluded grimly, "waiting for you to move. But how would they know we were planning to leave today?" Officer Reyes's expression darkened. "Your phone, your computer. If they have the resources of a military contractor, they could easily be monitoring your communications." The thought sent a chill through Hannah. How much did they know? How far would they go to get Luna back? "What do we do now?" she asked, feeling suddenly overwhelmed. "We can't go back home. We can't go to Dr. Martinez's sister's farm if they're following us." Reyes thought for a moment. "I have an idea. Wait here." She disappeared into another room, returning minutes later with a set of keys. "My brother has a cabin about 3 hours north of here," she explained. "It's deep in the woods, completely off-grid, no electricity, no phone, nothing they could trace. He uses it for hunting season, but it's empty now." Hope flickered in Hannah's chest. "You think we'd be safe there?" "Safer than anywhere around here," Reyes confirmed. "And I'll drive you there myself, in a police vehicle. We'll take back roads, avoid major highways." The plan was quickly set in motion. Officer Reyes arranged for a patrol car with tinted windows, explaining to her sergeant that she was assisting with a domestic situation that required relocation to a safe house. It wasn't entirely untrue. Luna and her puppies were transferred to the back seat of the patrol car, with Noah sitting beside them, his hand resting reassuringly on Luna's head. They left town via a series of increasingly remote roads, Reyes checking frequently to ensure they weren't being followed. After an hour, she seemed satisfied that they had evaded pursuit. "The cabin is basic," she warned as they drove deeper into forested hills. "One room, a wood stove, an outhouse. But it's solid and secure." "It sounds perfect," Hannah said sincerely. Anywhere away from Keller and his mysterious organization would be paradise as far as she was concerned. The sun was high in the sky when they finally turned onto a nearly invisible dirt track that wound through dense trees. After another 10 minutes of slow driving, they emerged into a small clearing where a rustic log cabin stood, its windows shuttered against the elements. "Here we are!" Reyes announced, killing the engine. "Home sweet home, at least for now." The cabin was indeed basic. A single room with a small kitchen area, a wood stove, a table with chairs, and a set of bunk beds built into one wall. But it was clean and sturdy, with thick walls that would keep out the autumn chill. Officer Reyes helped them unload their meager belongings and get Luna and the puppies settled on a nest of blankets near the wood stove. The German Shepherd seemed content with the arrangement, relaxing visibly once all her puppies were accounted for, and nursing. "I need to get back," Reyes said reluctantly, glancing at her watch. "My shift officially ended hours ago, and people will start asking questions if I'm gone much longer." "We'll be fine," Hannah assured her, though the thought of being left alone in the wilderness was more than a little intimidating. "Thank you for everything?" Reyes handed her a satellite phone. "For emergencies only. It can be traced if used, so only turn it on if you absolutely have to call for help. I'll come back to check on you in 2 days." After Reyes left, Hannah and Noah set about making the cabin as comfortable as possible. There was a well outside that provided clean water, and the kitchen was stocked with basic non-perishable foods. A small generator sat in a shed behind the cabin, with enough fuel for occasional use. As night fell, Hannah lit the wood stove and oil lamps, casting the cabin in a warm, golden glow. Despite the circumstances, there was something peaceful about their sanctuary. No electricity, no internet, no constant reminders of the outside world and its dangers. Noah seemed to be thriving in this simplified environment. He moved about the cabin with purpose, helping care for Luna and her puppies, his face more animated than Hannah had seen in months. Occasionally, he would sit beside Luna with his hand on her head, his eyes closed, as if they were communing in some silent, secret way. Hannah watched them, her heart full of both love and worry. What had happened to Luna? What strange connection had formed between the dog and her son? And most pressingly, how long would they need to hide before it was safe to return to their normal lives? As if sensing her thoughts, Luna lifted her head and met Hannah's gaze. In the dog's amber eyes, Hannah saw something remarkable. Not just animal intelligence, but a depth of awareness that felt almost human. Later, as Noah slept on the lower bunk and Luna dozed beside her puppies, Hannah sat at the small table, writing by lamplight in a journal she'd brought. She documented everything that had happened since they found Luna, every strange occurrence, every clue about Project Moonlight. If anything happened to her, she wanted there to be a record, something that could explain why they had run, why they had fought to protect this special dog and her puppies. A soft whine drew her attention. Luna was awake, watching her with those knowing eyes. The dog carefully extracted herself from her sleeping puppies and padded over to Hannah, moving with increasing strength and confidence as her injuries healed. Hannah reached out to stroke Luna's head. "What secrets are you hiding, girl?" she murmured. Luna pressed her head into Hannah's hand, and for a brief, disorienting moment, Hannah felt something. A flash of sensation that wasn't her own. A confusing kaleidoscope of smells, sounds, and feelings that her human brain couldn't quite process. She pulled her hand back with a gasp. Luna continued to watch her, head tilted slightly as if waiting for Hannah to understand. "Was that?" Hannah whispered, not quite able to complete the question. Had she just experienced what Noah had described, seeing through Luna's eyes, feeling what she felt? Luna blinked slowly, then returned to her puppies, settling beside them with a soft sigh. Hannah stared after her, mind reeling. If she had felt that connection, however briefly, then Noah's experience wasn't unique to him. Perhaps anyone could connect with Luna if they were open to it. And if that was true, if Luna could somehow share her perceptions with humans. No wonder Keller and his organization wanted her back so desperately. The next morning, Hannah woke to find Noah already up, sitting cross-legged beside Luna and her puppies. The 7th puppy, the one with the star on its chest, was cradled in his hands, its tiny form dwarfed by even Noah's small fingers. "Is it okay?" Hannah asked, kneeling beside him. Noah nodded, carefully returning the puppy to its mother. Then he looked up at Hannah with an expression she couldn't quite read, part excitement, part apprehension. "What is it?" she prompted gently. Noah hesitated, then leaned close to whisper in her ear. "The star puppy is special, like Luna, but more." "More?" Hannah repeated. "More how?" Noah struggled to find the words, his brow furrowing with concentration. Finally, he said simply, "Luna sees things we can't. Star Puppy shows things we can't." Hannah's mind raced to understand. If Luna had enhanced perception, the ability to detect things beyond normal canine senses, did that mean the seventh puppy could somehow project or transmit perceptions? Was that even possible? Before she could question Noah further, a sound from outside caught their attention. The distant but unmistakable hum of an engine. Someone was coming. What do you think will happen when Keller finds them at the cabin? Will the seventh puppy's special abilities save them all? Share your predictions below. Hannah's heart hammered in her chest. "Get down," she whispered to Noah, motioning him away from the window. She quickly doused the lamp and moved to peek through a crack in the shutters. A vehicle was approaching, not the sleek black SUV that had followed them earlier, but a familiar police cruiser. Relief flooded through her as she recognized Officer Reyes behind the wheel. "It's okay," she told Noah, who had protectively gathered Luna's puppies closer to their mother. "It's Officer Reyes." But as the cruiser drew nearer, Hannah's relief turned to confusion. Reyes had said she wouldn't return for 2 days, and she wasn't alone. There was someone in the passenger seat beside her. Noah tugged at Hannah's sleeve, his expression alarmed. When she looked down, he pointed to Luna, who had risen to her feet despite her still healing wounds. The German Shepherd's ears were forward, her body tense, a low growl building in her throat. "What is it, girl?" Hannah whispered, moving back to the window. As the cruiser parked in front of the cabin, the passenger door opened and Hannah's blood ran cold. Sergeant James Keller stepped out, his tall frame unmistakable even in the dim morning light. "No," Hannah breathed. "How did they find us?" Noah was already moving, gathering Luna's puppies into a basket lined with blankets. His actions were swift and sure, as if he'd prepared for this moment. He pointed toward the cabin's back door, then to the dense woods beyond. Hannah hesitated only a moment. The forest was vast and unfamiliar, the morning air bitter cold. But staying meant facing Keller, meant possibly losing Luna and her puppies, especially the seventh one, the star puppy that Noah had said was special. "Okay," she whispered, "get Luna ready." The German Shepherd needed no urging. Despite her injuries, she moved with newfound strength, positioning herself protectively beside Noah and the basket of puppies. Hannah quickly gathered their few essential belongings: the satellite phone, some food, a blanket, her journal. She stuffed everything into a backpack, then moved to the back door, easing it open just enough to peer outside. The forest stretched before them, dark and dense even in daylight. A narrow path led away from the cabin, disappearing among the trees. It was their only chance. "Come on," Hannah urged Noah, quickly but quietly. Noah went first, carrying the basket of puppies, moving with a confidence that belied his age. Luna followed, limping slightly but determined. Hannah brought up the rear, closing the door softly behind them. They had barely made it 20 yards into the trees when Hannah heard the cabin's front door open, followed by Keller's authoritative voice calling her name. "Keep going," she whispered to Noah. "Don't look back." They pushed deeper into the forest, the path growing less distinct with each step. The ground was uneven, roots and rocks threatening to trip them as they hurried forward. Luna stayed close to Noah, occasionally nudging him in one direction or another, as if guiding him. Behind them, Hannah could hear shouts as Keller discovered their absence. Soon, the sound of feet crashing through underbrush told her they were being pursued. "We need to hide," she told Noah, scanning the forest desperately. But there was nowhere, just trees and more trees, offering little concealment from determined searchers. Luna suddenly veered off the path, heading toward a dense thicket. Noah followed without hesitation, and Hannah had no choice but to trust them. They pushed through tangled branches that scratched at their skin and clothes, emerging into a small, hidden hollow. To Hannah's amazement, the hollow contained the entrance to what appeared to be an old mine shaft, or cave. its opening partially concealed by fallen rocks and overgrown vegetation. "How did you know this was here?" she whispered to Noah. He simply pointed to Luna, whose amber eyes gleamed with intelligence. The sound of pursuit grew closer. Without further discussion, they squeezed through the narrow opening into the cave. It was dark inside, but dry and surprisingly deep, extending far back into the hillside. Noah led them deeper into the darkness, Luna padding silently beside him. Hannah followed, one hand on the rough stone wall for guidance. The sounds of their pursuers faded as they moved further into the earth. Finally, when Hannah could see nothing but blackness, Noah stopped. She heard him setting down the basket of puppies, then the rustle of his movements. "Noah," she whispered, "we need light." A moment later, a soft, ethereal glow filled the cave, not from a flashlight or lamp, but from Luna herself, or rather, from her eyes, which now emitted a faint blue-white luminescence, just enough to illuminate their immediate surroundings. Hannah stared in disbelief. "What?" Noah knelt beside Luna, one hand on her head, the other cradling the seventh puppy, the star puppy, against his chest. The tiny creature's eyes were open, though far too young for that to be natural, and they glowed with the same blue-white light as its mother's. "Bioluminescence," Hannah whispered, recalling a science program she'd once watched. Some sea creatures could produce their own light through chemical reactions in their bodies. But dogs? It was impossible. Unless it wasn't natural at all. Unless it was part of the modifications Dr. Chen had speculated about. Changes made to Luna for Project Moonlight. The realization sent a chill down Hannah's spine. What else had they done to Luna? And what other abilities might the puppies have inherited or developed? "Noah," she said quietly, kneeling beside her son. "What else can Luna do? What can the star puppy do?" Noah looked up at her, his face eerily illuminated by the blue glow. "Luna sees danger," he whispered. "Star puppy shows safety." Hannah frowned, trying to understand. "Shows safety? How?" Instead of answering, Noah carefully placed the star puppy on the ground between them. The tiny creature wobbled on unsteady legs, far more coordinated than a days-old puppy should be. It turned in a small circle, nose to the ground, then sat and looked up at them. Suddenly, the air above the puppy seemed to shimmer, like heat rising from pavement on a hot day. The shimmering coalesced into an image, a three-dimensional projection of the forest outside, as if they were viewing it through a window that hadn't existed moments before. Hannah gasped, instinctively reaching toward the image before pulling her hand back. "It's projecting? How is that possible?" The image shifted, showing Keller and Officer Reyes searching the woods, moving steadily away from the cave's entrance. Then it changed again, revealing a different path through the forest, one that led away from the searchers toward what looked like a road. "It's showing us a safe way out," Hannah realized. "A route they won't find." Noah nodded, pleased that she understood. The projection faded, the star puppy seemingly exhausted by the effort. It wobbled back to Luna, who nuzzled it gently, before returning it to the basket with its siblings. Hannah sat back against the cave wall, mind reeling. A dog that could see beyond normal perception. A puppy that could project images of safe routes. What had the people behind Project Moonlight been trying to create? Weapons? Tools for espionage? Or something else entirely? "We need to rest," she finally said, realizing that none of them had slept properly in days. "I'll take first watch. You sleep." Noah nodded, curling up beside Luna and her puppies. Within minutes, his breathing had deepened into sleep. Hannah sat in the dim blue glow of Luna's eyes, listening for any sound of pursuit. But the cave remained quiet, the only noises being the occasional shifting of the puppies and the soft drip of water somewhere in the darkness. As hours passed with no sign of danger, Hannah's own exhaustion began to overtake her. Her eyelids grew heavy, her thoughts fuzzy. "Just a few minutes," she told herself as she leaned back against the cool stone wall. Just a short rest. She woke with a start, unsure how long she'd been asleep. The blue glow had dimmed, Luna's eyes now just faintly luminescent. Noah was still sleeping, but something had changed. There was tension in the air, a sense of imminent danger. Luna was alert, her ears pricked forward, listening to something Hannah couldn't hear. Then, gradually, she became aware of it too. Voices, distant but drawing closer. "They're coming," she whispered, touching Noah's shoulder to wake him. We need to move. Noah blinked awake instantly, his eyes finding Luna's in the dim light. Some unspoken communication seemed to pass between them. The star puppy was already awake, its tiny form glowing softly in the darkness. Once again, it projected an image, this time of a different passage leading deeper into the cave system, away from the approaching voices. That way? Hannah asked, pointing toward what appeared to be a solid wall of rock. Noah nodded, gathering the basket of puppies. Luna rose to her feet, her movement still stiff but determined. As they approached the seemingly solid wall, Hannah realized it was an optical illusion. There was actually a narrow fissure, just wide enough for a person to squeeze through if they turned sideways. Noah went first, carefully maneuvering the basket through the tight space. Luna followed, then Hannah, the rough stones scraping against her back and shoulders. The passage widened slightly on the other side, allowing them to move more easily. They followed it as it twisted and turned, always downward, deeper into the earth. The only light came from Luna and the star puppy, their blue glow casting strange, shifting shadows on the stone walls. After what seemed like hours, but was probably only minutes, the passage opened into a larger chamber. To Hannah's surprise, there was faint natural light here, filtering down from small fissures in the ceiling far above. We can rest here, she decided, seeing that Noah was struggling with the weight of the basket. They settled in a corner of the chamber, Luna immediately checking each of her puppies, nosing them gently to ensure they were okay. "Do you think we lost them?" Hannah whispered. Noah shrugged, his expression serious. He pointed to the star puppy, which was once again projecting an image, this time of Keller and several other men searching the first cave they had hidden in, flashlight beams cutting through the darkness. "They found our trail," Hannah realized with a sinking heart. "They'll figure out where we went eventually." Noah nodded gravely, then pointed to Luna and made a circular motion with his finger, encompassing the entire chamber. "Luna can help us hide?" Hannah guessed. Noah nodded again, then closed his eyes and placed his hand on Luna's head. The German shepherd's eyes flared brighter, the blue glow intensifying until it illuminated every corner of the chamber. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, gradually, Hannah began to notice changes in the stone walls around them. Or, rather, not changes in the walls themselves, but in her perception of them. Areas that had appeared solid began to reveal hidden openings, passages that had been invisible in the dim light. "She's showing us all the ways out," Hannah breathed. "All the escape routes." Noah opened his eyes and smiled, a real full smile that transformed his solemn little face. He pointed to one particular passage, then to the star puppy, which was projecting an image of that same passage leading to what looked like daylight. "That's our best option?" Hannah asked. Noah nodded confidently. They rested a while longer, sharing the food Hannah had brought, dried fruit and granola bars, and giving Luna water from a small collapsible bowl. The German shepherd was regaining her strength remarkably quickly, her wounds healing faster than seemed natural. Another gift from Project Moonlight, Hannah supposed. Accelerated healing to go along with enhanced perception and bioluminescent eyes. As they prepared to move on, Luna suddenly tensed, her ears pricked forward. A moment later, Hannah heard it too. The echo of voices, still distant, but clearly headed in their direction. "Time to go," she said, quickly packing their meager supplies. They entered the passage Noah had indicated, moving as quickly as they dared in the limited light. This tunnel was larger than the previous one, allowing them to walk upright, though the floor was treacherously uneven in places. Behind them, the voices grew louder, punctuated by the occasional shout of discovery or instruction. Their pursuers were gaining ground. "Faster," Hannah urged, though she knew Noah was already moving as quickly as he could while carrying the basket of puppies. The passage began to slope upward, the air growing fresher with each step. Ahead, Hannah could see actual daylight, real, natural sunlight filtering through what appeared to be an opening partially concealed by vegetation. They were almost there, almost to safety, when a shout echoed from much closer than expected. "I see them! Up ahead!" Hannah turned to see a beam of light bouncing off the walls behind them, rapidly approaching. Somehow, their pursuers had gained ground faster than should have been possible. "Run," she told Noah, who clutched the basket tighter and broke into a sprint toward the exit. Luna, however, stopped and turned to face the approaching men. A low growl rumbled from her chest, her illuminated eyes casting an eerie blue glow on the stone walls. "Luna, come on!" Hannah called desperately. But the German Shepherd stood her ground. As Hannah watched in amazement, the blue glow from Luna's eyes intensified, spreading until it seemed to fill the entire passage. And within that glow, shapes began to form. The ghostly translucent outlines of dogs, dozens of them, all with the same glowing eyes, all positioned protectively between Luna and the approaching men. An illusion, Hannah realized. Luna was projecting an illusion, similar to what the star puppy could do, but on a much larger scale. The effect on their pursuers was immediate. Shouts of alarm echoed through the passage, followed by the sound of retreating footsteps. They had run, terrified by the apparition of a pack of spectral dogs with glowing eyes. Luna held the illusion for a moment longer, then let it fade, turning back to Hannah with what almost looked like satisfaction in her intelligent eyes. "Good girl," Hannah whispered, her voice shaking with awe and relief. "Let's go." They emerged from the cave into late afternoon sunlight, the forest around them peaceful and seemingly untouched by human presence. According to the star puppy's projected guidance, they needed to head east to reach a road where they might find help. As they walked, Hannah's mind raced with questions. Luna's abilities went far beyond enhanced senses. She could project illusions, create light, possibly even communicate telepathically with Noah. The star puppy could project images of safe routes, perhaps drawing on its mother's perceptions. What else might they be capable of? And what had been the true purpose of Project Moonlight? After about an hour of walking, they reached the edge of the forest. A 2-lane highway stretched before them, empty in both directions. "Now what?" Hannah murmured, more to herself than to Noah. As if in answer, the star puppy projected another image, a vehicle approaching from the north, a familiar pickup truck. "Dr. Martinez?" Hannah said in disbelief. "How would he know to find us here?" Noah simply smiled his secretive smile and pointed to Luna, who sat calmly at his side, watching the empty road with certainty in her glowing eyes. Sure enough, within minutes, a truck appeared on the horizon, growing larger as it approached. Hannah recognized Dr. Martinez behind the wheel, with Dr. Chen in the passenger seat. The truck slowed as it neared them, then pulled over to the shoulder. Dr. Martinez and Dr. Chen jumped out, their expressions a mixture of relief and amazement. "How did you find us?" Hannah asked as they approached. Dr. Chen glanced at Luna, then at the basket of puppies, her eyes lingering on the star puppy. "We didn't," she admitted. "We received a message. It's hard to explain, but we both saw the same image in our minds. This stretch of highway, you and Noah waiting." "Luna sent it," Noah said clearly, his voice stronger than Hannah had heard it in months. "She called for help." Dr. Martinez nodded, as if this made perfect sense. "We need to get you somewhere safe. Keller and his people have been searching everywhere. They've even brought in military personnel." "Military?" Hannah repeated, her fears confirmed. "Not police?" "No," Dr. Chen said grimly. "This goes way beyond local law enforcement. Whatever Project Moonlight was, it has powerful backers who want to keep it secret." They quickly loaded Luna and the puppies into the back of the truck, Hannah and Noah climbing in beside them. As they drove away, Hannah felt a weight lifting from her shoulders. They weren't safe yet, not by a long shot, but they weren't alone anymore either. Dr. Martinez drove for hours, taking back roads and avoiding main highways. Finally, as night fell, they arrived at what appeared to be an old farm compound, surrounded by high fences topped with security cameras. "Welcome to the Guardian Sanctuary," Dr. Chen said, as they passed through a heavily secured gate. "It's a refuge for former military and police working dogs, those who have been retired, injured, or experimented on." The compound consisted of several buildings set around a central courtyard. There were other dogs visible, some in outdoor runs, others walking with handlers. All different breeds with one thing in common: an alertness, an intelligence that seemed beyond normal canine capacity. "They're all like Luna?" Hannah asked as they were led to a comfortable, if simple, cabin on the edge of the property. "Similar, though none with her specific abilities," Dr. Chen explained. "We've been rescuing dogs from various experimental programs for years. Some were enhanced for detection work, others for combat operations. Luna is unique." Inside the cabin, they settled Luna and her puppies into a warm, soft bed specially prepared for them. The German Shepherd seemed to instantly recognize the sanctuary as a safe place, her body relaxing as she allowed the resident veterinarian to examine her and her puppies. "They're all healthy," the vet confirmed. "Remarkably so, given what they've been through." That night, after Noah had fallen asleep, Hannah sat with Dr. Chen and Dr. Martinez, finally able to ask the questions that had been burning in her mind. "What exactly was Project Moonlight trying to achieve?" she asked. "And why is Keller so desperate to get Luna back?" Dr. Chen sighed heavily. "Based on what we've gathered from other rescued animals and whistleblowers, Project Moonlight was attempting to create the ultimate reconnaissance asset. A dog that could perceive things beyond normal sensory range and somehow transmit that information to human handlers. They were experimenting with various enhancements, genetic modifications, neural implants, chemical treatments. And Luna was successful, Hannah guessed. Too successful, Dr. Martinez added. From what we can piece together, she developed abilities they never anticipated. The illusion projection, the bioluminescence, possibly even the telepathic communication with Noah. But why abandon her? Her pregnancy was unexpected, Dr. Chen explained, and it changed her somehow, made her uncontrollable, resistant to their training methods. They couldn't use her, but they couldn't risk anyone else finding her either. So they tried to eliminate her. And now they want the puppies, Hannah realized. Especially the star puppy. Dr. Chen nodded grimly. The next generation, born with these abilities rather than artificially enhanced, potentially far more valuable than Luna herself. "We won't let them have them," Hannah said firmly. "Any of them." "The sanctuary is secure," Dr. Martinez assured her. "And we have legal resources, connections in Washington who can help expose Project Moonlight for what it truly is. An unethical, illegal experiment that violated every standard of animal welfare." Hannah wasn't entirely convinced. She had seen the lengths Keller was willing to go to, the resources at his disposal. But looking at Luna, now peacefully nursing her puppies, including the special seventh one with its star-shaped mark, she felt a fierce determination rise within her. This remarkable dog had saved Noah, had brought back his voice and his smile. Now it was their turn to save her and her puppies, to give them the life of freedom and love they deserved. As if sensing her thoughts, Luna lifted her head and met Hannah's gaze. In those intelligent amber eyes, now back to their natural color without the blue glow, Hannah saw understanding, gratitude, and something else. A bond that transcended the normal connection between human and animal. Noah stirred in his sleep, murmuring something too soft to hear. Luna's ears pricked forward, listening, and Hannah could have sworn the dog smiled. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. A family unlike any other, bound by love and an extraordinary connection that defied explanation. And the star puppy? It slept peacefully against its mother's side, its tiny chest rising and falling with each breath, the white star mark seeming to glow softly in the dim light. A beacon of hope in an uncertain future. What do you think happened to Sergeant Keller? Could there be more dogs like Luna out there? Like, share, and subscribe to find out what happens next in this incredible story of courage, mystery, and unbreakable bonds.